So, good morning, everyone, and welcome to this webinar in partnership with Elite Franchise around the powerful online accounting system, Twinfield. So, today we're going to talk you through why Twinfield is the accounting software of choice for multiple franchises across the UK and beyond. So, Mike, next slide. Thank you very much. So, look, let me give you a little bit of an agenda. This session will run for approximately 60 minutes. You can ask questions at any time using the Q&A panel. You can use the group chat to connect with your peers. And we are using this recording, which will be shared with you after the call. Today, I am joined by, my name's Phil Hobden. I'm head of digital sales here at Wolters Kluwer Tax and Accounting UK. I've been with Wolters Kluwer for just over a year and a bit now, and Twinfield is one of the products I look after within our portfolio. I'm joined today by two of our experts here at Wolters Kluwer around Twinfield. First up, Mike Hibbert, who is digital specialist here at Twinfield. Mike, good morning.
Morning, everyone, and thanks for the introduction, Phil. So I've been in the industry for about 15 or 16 years now, working with franchisees, accountants, big sort of corporations. Probably more recent times, in the last 4 or 5 years, it's been predominantly helping them businesses on their digital journey. So becoming more automated, reducing manual data entry, and what me and Colin are going to be showing you today is a system that a lot of franchisees, big practices that we work with, big corporate customers are using at the minute. So yeah, that's what I do at the moment on the digital team, and I'll pass you over to Colin.
Yeah, good morning. So my name's Colin Emmett. I'm one of the senior consultants at Wolters Kluwer who help our customers get the best out of our tax and accounting products. I've been with Wolters Kluwer now for coming on to 6 years. And prior to that, I worked out in the marketplace helping businesses implement bookkeeping solutions, including products such as Access Dimensions.
So genuinely, we do have two experts, both in accounting technology and implementing accounting technology. And I think, Colin, you must have implemented hundreds and hundreds of firms with Twinfield and helped them kind of get up and running. So you're all in very, very safe hands here today on this webinar. So let's have a look at our agenda and what we've got going on for today. So Mike is going to run you through the key features of Twinfield. And we'll then give you an overview of Twinfield, what it looks like, what it does, and how it can work really well for you within the franchise industry. We're then going to talk through a case study of a client currently using this. And actually, it's a great client to talk through because their implementation of Twinfield, how they use it, and within the business that they have, is a good example of what is capable at every end of the spectrum of Twinfield. And of course, we will answer your questions at the end. And please feel free at any point during this webinar to ask us a question. So you can pop questions in the Q&A, and I will put them to Colin and Mike as we work through today's call. So, Mike, let's get started. And why don't you run us through some of the key features of Twinfield?
Yeah, thanks, Phil. And I really wanted to go through a few of the key features just before we go live, because generally this answers quite a lot of questions that customers have. So Twinfield can easily manage all accounting functions. That's from invoicing to management accounting, and it's suitable for really all franchisees, regardless of what industry you're currently in. And it does this through some key sort of capabilities. So the first one being advisors and clients can share real-time information. So you'll be collaborating with confidence that the system is as up to date as the last transaction and invoice that was posted. And advisors can also view live financial information. So you're getting a better view of business critical decisions in real time. Twinfield is also scalable software that copes with business growth. So you're really safe in the knowledge that as required, you can start off using simple functionality and then maybe go on to the more advanced functionality like fixed assets, project accounting. We have a lot of customers using intercompany postings. You've got your group consolidation and multi-currency as well, which I know Colin's going to be touching on the multi-currency side. And while we're on multi-currency, Twinfield is multi-language, multi-currency. You instantly have the facility to see a company's financial position in the currency of your choice, as well as produce international group reports in the designated reporting currency. So just to touch on that in a little bit more detail, we have a lot of customers who, let's say they are processing in UK sterling, but they might do all of their reporting to head office, let's say over in the States. So we have a lot of customers who will set up Twinfield in a base currency from a transactional level, but they will want to do their reporting in a different currency, which is possible, and it's a very common way that we do set up for a lot of businesses and franchisees. You've also got time-saving drill down. So from any report to the initiating transaction, scanned image or stored invoice. So this helps for immediate responsive to queries. Our single ledger design eliminates the need for reconciliation and period close, giving you more time to analyze the figures instead of creating them. We also have seamless API integration. So Twinfield's open API links provide secure integration with your chosen business systems, such as stock and purchase control, that pull that data into Twinfield. It's also worth mentioning here that if you need anything which is very industry specific for you, Twinfield does have true open API. So a link can be created for something that might be industry specific for yourself. We also have end-to-end accounting. So Twinfield integrates with accounts production, practice management, and Basecone, which I am going to be touching on later on, providing you a true end-to-end accounting solution for both advisors and businesses. Just a couple more points to run through. Accessing source documents. So within Twinfield, permission settings allow you full control over who can access what documents, giving you better security over information. So it's only natural that within any business, various users will have different levels of knowledge. So you might have someone who just wants to maybe concentrate on the ledger side, doing the day-to-day processing, and someone else that maybe focus more on the reporting side. So we have various different access levels and user roles within Twinfield. And then last but definitely not least is security. Within Wolters Kluwer, we have first-class security using data centers in Europe. Data is protected by firewalls, antivirus, and data encryption software with independent security audits which are carried out quarterly. So you can't really put a price on that sort of peace of mind that your data is as safe and secure as possible. Now, just before
I was just going to say, before you do that, one thing I also want to add that probably we don't talk about enough, right? Twinfield is not new to the market. It's not new to the industry. In fact, Twinfield was one of the first cloud accounting softwares out there. And actually, we work very closely with the development team out in the Netherlands, where Twinfield is all across Europe. So it's not just a UK solution; it's a European and actually wider solution, and it's been around for quite a while.
Yeah, that's true, Phil. In terms of cloud accounting software, Twinfield is ahead of a lot that's out there at the minute. It's over 20 years old. It's a really great product that's used by global franchisees, and I think one of the best things about it, not just from a functionality level, is it's robust, and it's not going to start lagging when them higher volumes of transactions are going through. So yeah, thanks for putting that in there, Phil. Brilliant. And just before I pass over to Colin, I just wanted to give you a couple of numbers in regards to how Twinfield is used. So this is used, as I mentioned, by global franchisees. We have award-winning accountancy practices, large corporations using Twinfield. And in 2002, which are the most up-to-date yearly figures that I have at the moment, Twinfield was used across 99 countries. On average, 7.3 million transactions were processed a month, 450,000 bank statements are processed a month, and 150,000 annual VAT returns. So I think it's important just to put a few numbers against how Twinfield is used globally. And what I'm going to do now, I'm going to pass you over to Colin, who is on our professional services team. We've got a few key areas that we want to cover within Twinfield. And I also just want to make you aware that it's always a bit difficult when you're doing a live webinar, that there might be certain aspects that we're showing you that might not be completely relevant to how you work as a business. We've tried to pick out sort of 3 or 4 things that are really key that come up with a lot of our other franchisees. But if there's anything that is away from the session that we're doing today, you know, we can always pick that up on a one-to-one call away from the webinar.
Great, thanks, Mike. There's 4 sort of key areas in Twinfield I'd like to just run through this morning. They are sort of looking at the banking side and dealing with the bank statements. That's an important business process for all businesses. Everybody wants to know what the current position of their bank account is. So I'm going to walk through how we can deal with that data that we get from the bank. We're going to have a look at the fixed asset register. So some businesses like to keep their fixed assets in the software. They'll record their asset register in there, and the system will allow you to depreciate and work with those assets along the financial side of those transactions as well. Mike mentioned earlier, we'll have a quick look at the multi-currency angle of Twinfield and how that works. And also the options for working within groups, consolidated reporting, etc. So back to the first topic, the bank feed. So I've logged into Twinfield. I can see all the companies that my user has access to. I'm going to work this morning with my wine company, the UK arm of that company. So as soon as I select the company, it takes me through into the home page. Now, the home page has a number of favorites at the top, and this gives me shortcuts to areas of the functionality within the software. So everything I'm going to show you this morning, I've put as a home page favorite, so I don't have to dig through the menu system. So bank statements. If I look at the bank statement processing screen, I can see all the bank statements that I have not yet dealt with. Now, a bank statement can be brought into Twinfield in 1 of 2 ways. It can be brought in using our bank feed process. And within the bank feeds, we support all UK major high street banks. And we also support the newer banks as well, the UK banks such as Starling, Monzo, and Tide, etc. If there is a bank that's not available on bank feed, or perhaps it's a foreign bank, or you just don't prefer to use the bank feeds, then the data can also be exported out of your online banking, and through simple templates that we can create, that CSV file from the bank's download can be then imported into Twinfield. Either method, once that data is within Twinfield, the processing of those lines on those bank statements are exactly the same. So this morning, I'm going to focus on my bank statement for the 1st of June. So anywhere on the line, I'm just going to click to open it. And this shows me the lines that are actually on that bank account. So I've got 5 lines that went through my bank statement on that date. Now, the first thing to note on this screen is it's split into buckets to differentiate the status of the transaction. So the first bucket you'll see at the top of the screen here, assign. This tells me transactions that Twinfield hasn't been able to recognize. It doesn't know what to do with them. So it's asking me to decide how I want to code that up in the system. We've then got the blue proposed bucket. And this basically shows me any transactions which Twinfield has been able to match through either AI or through bank rules that I've created previously when I've seen these transactions. The next bucket is the investigate. So perhaps my bank statement processing is split between different people within the organisation, and maybe the initial look of that bank statement is dealt with by somebody who's a little bit more junior, doesn't really understand or see or know what to do with all the transactions. So they can flag one of those transactions as to investigate. Or perhaps something's come through on the bank statement and you don't recognise it, so it can be left in this bucket for you to go back later to investigate. The final bucket is the signed. So if a transaction has been matched up and coded to a supplier, a customer, or wherever it needs to be coded, then the system will deem that as being complete as far as the bank statement is concerned. So it's in the assigned, the completed bucket. So I'm going to go back into my assigned bucket, and I can see I've got three lines here that I need to address. First one is a rent payment for £7,500. Twinfield will automatically assume if it's a payment out of the bank account, you've paid the supplier. If it's money coming into the bank account, you've received from a customer. However, you can override that simply by clicking on the drop down and decide whether it's a supplier payment, a supplier refund perhaps, or maybe it's not actually anything to do with the ledgers and you're posting it straight to a general ledger code, maybe some payment out for a train ticket or something. I'm going to leave this as a supplier payment. And Twinfield then takes me into the next screen, and it's asking me how I want to deal with this. So the first thing it shows me is all the open, unmatched transactions that are in the purchase ledger. So I could search this screen for any invoice that was maybe for £7,500 outstanding, certain date range, certain supplier. Or I could actually just go straight to the suppliers, and I could then look down my list of suppliers and find the supplier that I know that this payment was made to. And this is going to be Kingston Borough Council. Once I have selected the supplier, if I know that there is further invoices in there that I want to match it against, I can now drill down into the invoices, and this will show me any outstanding invoices in the system, and I can match against those invoices. This particular invoice, in this example, I'm going to leave as on account, so unmatched. So when we come to the supplier open item report afterwards, I can see that transaction waiting to be matched off. So I'm going to click on save. And that's now taking me automatically onto the next line within the bank statement. It's a receipt from the Anchor Pub. And I can click on customers because Twinfield's assuming it's going to be a receipt from a customer. I can perhaps search the outstanding invoices for the Anchor Pub, and I can pick any one of these invoices to match against. Yeah, this one I'm just going to leave on account because I've no invoice. So I'm just going to go back into customers, and I'm going to pick the customer just from the list, as I did with the supplier invoice. Now, before I move on to the next line in the bank statement, you'll notice down at the bottom here, I've got to investigate. So perhaps I'm running through this and I actually don't recognise it. You'll notice the description's a little bit strange. It's actually John's Payroll Services, even though I have assigned it to the Anchor Pub. Perhaps I know that when Anchor Pub send the payment through to us, they have put that on their bank statement description. But just to check, I might want somebody else to review it. I can just click the to investigate button. And if you remember from the first screen, it will move it into that bucket. So then somebody else can review that for me. So I'm going to save the line on the bank statement. And the final one that I had in my to assign section was another receipt from Coco's. So I'm going to say, yes, it's a customer receipt. And this time I'm going to go through and find Coco's Wine Boy. And I'm going to match this partly because I haven't got a full outstanding invoice for £300. So I'm going to use this invoice here for £12,915. This link on the list of invoices would let me see a copy of the invoice. So if it's an invoice that we've created from within the invoicing module with Twinfield, it would show me the actual invoice. If I was looking at the purchase ledger side and it was an invoice which had been booked into the system via base code and there was an image of that purchase invoice attached to it, this would also then let me see the image. So I'm going to go ahead and select that one invoice. Because I've got more on the invoice than what's been paid out, I have to tell Twinfield what to do with the difference. So I'm just going to say that I'm matching off £300 against that invoice. Next time this transaction comes through the bank statement, I want Twinfield to suggest to me that it should be coded up to Coco's Wine Boy. Now, the AI technology in the background wasn't able to recognise the transaction. There wasn't anything in there. Perhaps there was no invoice number, or the company name didn't match what we have on our supplier or customer records. So I can just use the description that that's on the bank statement. So here is the description. If I highlight it, you'll notice now over on the right, on the left here, it tells me that the match and rule criteria is when the description is COCOs. So every time it sees COCOs on a bank statement, it will assume that it should go and be posted to the customer of COCOs Wine Bar. So I can now accept and create the rule. And that has now completed that process. So I can see that these two lines, even though they're still in the to assign section, they are coded up, and I can see that there is buttons over here that if I needed to, I could drill back in and allocate those against the invoices and the ledgers. The proposed list. So as the system is worked with and it becomes and learns more about how you work with your bank statement, there should be less in the assign and more in the proposed. So then it becomes more of a check-in exercise. So this list shows me all the transactions which Twinfield has matched up. So yep, I can see that I've got a line on the bank statement which is for bank fees. Yep, it's coded it to bank charges. I'm happy with that. And the same for the interest. It's gone through to the bank interest code. So I can accept that. Now that I have completed my bank statement, I can go back into my list of bank statements waiting to be dealt with. And the final stage would be to post the bank statement. What this will then do is it will create the transactions on the audit trail based on the codings that I've just created on those lines. So I click on post and post bank statements. Those are now being posted onto the audit trail and will now appear in my trial balance reports. Okay. So the bank process is quite intuitive. It's a simple process, and as I say, it's quite an important process for all businesses, because you need to know on a day-to-day basis where you are with your bank statements, etc., and what the current positions are. So the next area I'd like to just have a look at is the fixed assets within Twinfield. So this is a module that has recently gone through a refresh and a redevelopment. I say recently, it's probably in the last 2 to 2.5 years, but we've now got customers that are migrating from the old module that we had into this. More of an intuitive, user-friendly feel of the module. So let's say that we have a process within our business. So I've got somebody in my bookkeeping team who is processing the purchase invoices, and perhaps they're using something like Basecall. They won't necessarily know whether those things that we're buying, those assets, should be just going straight to the P&L, or whether they should be capitalised. So we need a method to be able to manage this slightly. Now, the way that the asset register works is that we set up certain nominal codes in the balance sheet that the system's watching. And as transactions are posted into those nominal codes, we can then pick those up if we need to, and we can then put them into the asset register and then deal and work with those assets. So, as I say, the life of the asset, the invoice has come in and it's been posted into the purchase ledger using the AI tool Basecall, and the image of the invoice is in the system. Now, because it's my bookkeeper that's doing that, and they don't necessarily know the full rules behind everything, I want to keep a little bit of control over that. So that invoice has been posted into Twinfield as a provisional unapproved transaction. So I've got a report on my favourites here, the provisional assets to confirm. This particular report is just looking at one nominal code, which is my IT assets, my IT computer equipment. So if I run this report, I can see here that I've got one provisional unapproved transaction in here, and I can click on the transaction to actually open up and see how that was coded up. Now, because this transaction is an unapproved provisional transaction, I've got full editing privileges over this transaction. First thing I might want to do is look at what the invoice was. So I've got the link here for purchase, and this will then show me what that invoice looks like. If I then go back into my transaction, perhaps I know on that invoice there was £100 delivery that I can't really capitalise, so I need to take that out of this invoice. So I can go ahead and add a further line into this, so editing what my bookkeeper's done. And I'm just going to put in another line for delivery and packaging. And let's just say that was £100. And just going to reduce the value of the asset by 100. So now that I've edited the transaction, I can authorize that transaction by clicking the final button. And if I go back into Twinfield, that has now completed that process. So if I refresh this report now, you can see that that has disappeared. So I have no unapproved assets waiting to be checked. So that's the first stage. Once you've gone through that process, and that's just the way I've dealt with it, you may define in your business processes that you don't need to do that. You can go straight on to this next stage. So from the asset register, I've now got this option here called assets to be processed. So this shows me all in transactions that have been posted into my asset codes on the balance sheet, and those transactions that I haven't yet dealt with. So the invoice that I have just posted, this one here for 3,232, is showing in the list. If I click on the transaction number, it reopens the transaction so I can see the details of the transaction. And I still got the ability to click on the purchase button to go and have a look at the image. You'll notice now that I've approved this transaction, it's locked, so I can't actually do anything with that transaction. So back to the list of assets. This screen, before we move on, is broken down, again, similar to the bank screen, into buckets. So we've got various stages of the life of the asset. So anything in the to be processed bucket would show us transactions that aren't yet set up in the register and we need to deal with. We may have an asset, well, as we're dealing with it, that we want to record, but we've not yet activated it. Maybe it's not yet started its useful life. So perhaps we want to just record the details around it, but we activate it later. We've then got the option here to see all the active assets within the system. And then, as you'd expect, anything that we've now deactivated, we're not using, or any assets that we've sold or disposed of over time. So how do we go ahead and activate and set up a new asset? So I'm going to click on the row of my iPad invoice, and it takes me into the details of the asset. So this is going to allow me to define information around the asset. It's also going to allow me to define a class, and the class simply defines the depreciation method and the bookkeeping rules in the background as to where that depreciation is going to be posted to. So the first section it's asking me is, what's the details of the asset? So it's giving me the next asset number in the sequence. I can change that if I have my own sequencing number. And a description, so it's taken the description from what was on the purchase invoice. I might want to enhance that, so when I'm looking at my asset register, it means a little bit more to me than just saying iPad. And it tells me here who the supplier was on the invoice, and I can also go ahead and link to other transactions that I might have in Twinfield. So perhaps I bought the asset and some accessories that went with it, so I may want to link those additional transactions with it as well. As I come down the screen, this is now asking me about the depreciation of the asset. So which class does this asset belong in? And as you can see, I've got 4 assets set up here. I've got one set specifically for computers, one for my plant and machinery, and so on. And in the background, that particular class defines the depreciation method. So we've got all the standard depreciation methods in the system, so reducing, balance, fixed line, etc. As I come down, it's now asking me more information about the asset. So what is the type? So this is just reported information. So we can group our assets together. So you might have specific category types. You might have equipment types that you want to be able to group together on your reports. I would then come down into the depreciation setting. So I mentioned that the class defines the depreciation. That, however, can be flexed per asset as you're entering it if you need to. So it may be that this particular asset we want to depreciate in a slightly different way than to the normal. So I have the options here to go ahead and change those. I can also enter a stock value and a remainder value if I needed to do that against my asset. And then also down here, the bookkeeping. So this will define where the asset is being posted to within my ledgers. You can see that I'm using something here called a cost center, or I could use a cost center. So I could be very specific and keep all my assets grouped together in cost centers and projects, so I can see at my financial reporting level what the cost and depreciation is per asset if I really wanted to do that level of detail. Once I've completed all the information on the asset I need to, if I just scroll down one last point to note on here, we've got some custom fields. So I've got a serial number, so perhaps I want to put in a serial number from the asset. If it was a vehicle, I could put in the license plate, etc. So I'm going ahead and I'm creating the asset. So it's now disappeared from my to be processed list. And if I go over to my active list, we'll now see the asset is sat in here. And I can see it's at the bottom. Asset number 16 was the one that we created. So I can view an asset detail. So I'm just going to pick an existing asset. I'm going to go for my coffee machine here. And as I go into the detail of the asset, it shows me a graph which shows me the current position of the depreciation, which is the section to the left of this orange line. And then the forecasted depreciation based on what the system has been told about how we depreciate the asset. From this screen, I can also edit the asset. So maybe I want to create an addition. Maybe if I go into the edit button here, you can see I've got some options down here to merge and split. So perhaps an example, my coffee machine I bought at the entry level design, but there's some additional accessories that I can purchase to enhance that coffee machine. Maybe I buy those and I put those in the system as a separate asset, but I can then merge those two assets together to allow me to increase and revalue that asset, if you will. I can also change the depreciation methods. I can change the reporting. So perhaps I wanted to change the asset type, where it sits in my groups, etc. Maybe the asset type is being used as a branch, and I want to move my coffee machine from branch A to branch B, so I can define when that happens. From the individual asset, I can also run a depreciation. Or if I go back to my list of assets, I can run the depreciation as a batch. So I can select the assets that I want to depreciate in this run and click the buttons at the bottom to depreciate. I'm going to go ahead and just depreciate for the first time my asset of iPad. And you'll notice over here, I've got a button now selected it in the list. I can select the button to depreciate. It asks me to what point do I want to depreciate the asset. So we're only in June, so I want to run the depreciation for this month. So if I now click on the depreciate button, that depreciation has now been processed. If I just switch buckets to refresh the list, we should see at the bottom now, actually at the top, because I've got it sorted by my last depreciated. So my asset number 16 has now got a last depreciation period of June. And if I go into that asset, I can see now that I've got some depreciation starting to appear within the list. Within the asset, you can sell or dispose. So if you've got an asset that you come to the end of life, but it's still got some value, you can sell it on. If you've made a mistake with the depreciation, you can also reverse, and you can also revalue the assets if need be. If I just go back to my home page, we also have a number of fixed asset reports within the system, and these can be quite easily created and exported out into Excel or Word, and they cover all areas of the system, of the data around the asset and the depreciation for you to work with. So moving on from the, one last point around fixed assets before I move on. In addition to the fixed asset register, one of the options that we have within the year-end routines within Twinfield is to create a number of posting instructions. So within the posting instructions here, I can define that when I run my year-end, for the brought forward balances into the new financial year, the balances that are in my depreciation code, for example, can be rolled up into my IT equipment code. So I can automate the creation of those year-end adjustments into the new financial year to roll up my depreciation from last year into the value of my assets for this year. So moving on from fixed assets, the next area to look at is multi-currency. So Twinfield is a full multi-currency product. We record transactions in the local currency, so the currency the transaction was generated in. We maintain a base currency, and we also maintain a reporting currency. Currencies are maintained in the system through the currency screen, and you can set up any number of currencies that you wish to work with. And then you can manually amend or maintain the currency rates through this screen. Or you can, in fact, import them if you have a feed that you're downloading data from. Or you can actually use one of our partners who has a feed that will bring in those currency rates into Twinfield for you automatically. So when you're working with Twinfield and posting transactions, I'm going to use a purchase manual data entry screen for this example. This is the screen that I would use if I wasn't using any AI or any other system to bring the data in. If I just wanted to sit at the keyboard and batch in my invoices, this is the screen I would use. So I could pick a supplier, let's say it's Taylor Maintenance, and within this screen I can now define what the currency is that this invoice has been sent to me in. So one of the points to note with Twinfield is that with it being fully multi-currency, you can transact with any customer or supplier in any of the currencies that you've got set up in the single account. Some solutions require that you have to set up separate suppliers or customers and define that one particular account to be in the currency that you're going to transact with them in. So you've got maybe if you're using euros and pounds, you have to have two accounts set up. So as the transactions are being posted, the system in the background using those currency rates is maintaining the local currency, the base currency, and the reporting currency. It was mentioned earlier in the intro that you may have a UK business, but you have to report to group head in euros. And this is quite a useful feature for dealing with that. So I've got a report here, my simple trial balance with the reporting currency. If I just run it for this financial year, we can see very quickly that I've got my balances of my TB both in pounds and also in euros. Now, within the reporting module, we also have a currency revaluation option. So you can use that to revalue any base currency, maybe for specific balance code, maybe foreign bank accounts. You can also use it to revalue the reporting currency as well if you need to. And the final thing just to look at in here is dealing with consolidation around groups. So the reporting and the intercompany within Twinfield is quite flexible. So within the setup of Twinfield, it is possible to define a standard nominal code structure that you can apply across every company within your group. Just keeps things consistent. It's easy to change, create a new nominal code in the head, and that can be then updated into the subsidiaries. When you're posting a transaction, the intercompany function in the background can help with charging costs across into other companies within the group. I'm going to use my purchase data entry screen as an example again. So perhaps using my example that we had before of the iPad. So let's say I bought an iPad for £2,500 and it is going to the computer and software sundry costs. But actually that would charge it to me as the head company. What I want to do is actually recharge that across to my European or my EU company. And as soon as I've changed my destination to look at this company, I'm now looking at the nominal codes from that particular subsidiary company. So in the background, we have some configuration to tell Twinfield what are the intercompany accounts that are used for this transaction. And once I post this transaction, what will happen is that the creditor, which is the liability, and the VAT liability will stop within the company I'm posting the transaction from. But the value, the cost of that will be charged through to the P&L in my other company. So a very quick and easy way to be able to recharge between companies. If you're dealing with or need to deal with elimination transactions within your group structure, we have a number of methods of actually how we can achieve that. The first one is a simple method of excluding certain nominal codes from the report. So you post anything that needs to be eliminated into these particular ranges of codes, and they can be excluded from the consolidation reporting. The other method, which gives you more control over it, is to actually use a specific company within the group, which is designed just for elimination journals. And you would post your journal into that and include that into the consolidation reporting. So how easy is it to actually run a consolidated report in Twinfield? So I've already shown you running the trial balance report. I have another version of that report here called Consolidated TB. It's exactly the same style of report, but all I've done this time is I've asked Twinfield to run the report by group, and I've got all my companies that I want to include in this consolidation within this group in Twinfield called the consolidation group. As soon as I click on next, it runs me the trial balance report, but this is now pivoted by the company within the group. And you can see very quickly and easily that report is shown on screen, and you can then go ahead and export that out if you need to do further information or analysis on this report. Okay. So Mike, thank you. Those are my points for this morning.
Can't hear you at the moment, Mike. Oh, I think we've got a problem with Mike's audio currently. I'm sure Mike will. There we go.
Is that better, Phil?
That's better. We can hear you now.
There we go. No, I was just saying, Colin, that was brilliant. I really appreciate you joining us this morning and sort of taking us through that. Another reason that it was so important to get Colin on the call is that when a customer is signing up to Twinfield, we really want to make sure it's the right product for you and build a lasting relationship. So Colin, working on our professional services team, does the majority of our onboarding, our training and our setup. So it's someone like him who you'll be building a relationship from the start. So yeah, Colin, I really appreciate you joining us to go through that this morning. Just in the background, why Colin was going through there, I just logged into Basecone. So Basecone is our very own data capture tool, which is designed to reduce manual data entry. But I also like to see it as a GDPR tool as well. With Basecone, it eliminates the need to keep paper records of invoices, for example, whether it's a purchase invoice or a sales invoice. There's multiple ways that documents can be imported into Basecone, whether that is through the mobile application, which you can also do expenses through. Basecone has a unique email address per company that you use it for, so documents can be invoiced straight into Basecone. You could save multiple documents to a file on your desktop and upload them, or a lot of businesses, they'll like to scan them in, put multiple pages on a scanner and just scan all them documents in a batch. So I'm hoping everyone can see my screen. Can you just confirm, Phil, if just give us yeah, everyone's okay?
All good.
So what I've done is I've uploaded a purchase invoice. This is for Kingston Borough Council. And you can see on the right-hand side here that it's already preset quite a bit of information for me because I've put some posting rules on for Kingston Borough Council. So it knows the value, it knows the supplier, you can see where it's got the account code that it needs to go to prepayments, and it has also picked up the value as well. Now, in the background, before we started, I actually did this invoice just a couple of times just to show you that it's quite hard to make a mistake through Basecone. So you can see that it's warning me here that there's 2 duplicate invoices here. So I can actually view these invoices and I can see that they are actual duplicates. Just for time and demonstration purposes, I'm just going to put franchise on the end of the invoice just to make sure that it knows that it's not a duplicate anymore. It knows my descriptions, and in the bottom right-hand corner, I can book this straight into the accounting system, which in this case is going to be Twinfield, or I can book it and apply posting rules if it is a new invoice for a new supplier or a new customer that you haven't posted a document for. It's also worth mentioning here as well on the top right-hand corner, Basecamp will allow you to put a workflow management on here. So you can have, let's say, 3 authorizers, and let's say an invoice is over £1,000 and you wanted to go that to a second authorizer, or there is a specific customer or supplier that you deal with that maybe you want someone more senior in the business to authorize that before it gets booked into Twinfield. You can put a workflow management on there, which is really handy, because we find that a lot of businesses, when it comes to data capture tools and doing this sort of side, it might be someone a little bit more junior within the business. So again, if it's a big supplier that you're dealing with and higher value invoices, you might just want someone a little bit more senior within the business to authorize them before the process. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to book that into Twinfield. One thing that I really love about Basecamp is that any information that is processed from Basecamp into Twinfield, you will have the facility to see that instantly. There are other data capture tools. You might be familiar with your auto entries and your decks. Twinfield and Basecamp go hand in hand, and you'll see in a second that there's multiple reports that I could show here, but the one that I generally show for this type of thing is our supplier transactions. When I'm running reports, make sure you've got your periods on there. I can include provisional and final transactions. And if I just click on next now and just scroll down to my supplier for Kingston Borough Council, you will see here is the invoice that I've just processed. And Colin briefly touched on this, and I mentioned it on the start about going into the source information, where I've got the hourglass here. I can go straight into Basecamp, see the document that I've just processed, and I've even got a timeline for auditing point of view. So I can see that it's myself who booked it, I authorized it, I did the tagging, and ultimately it's me who put that document into Twinfield. Also within Basecamp, you have the facility to do prepayments from the booking screen that I've just done there. You have the facility to upload an invoice in a different currency, whether it's sterling, euros, dollars. So Twinfield and Basecamp really do go hand in hand, and I really find that the majority of businesses that we work with will generally have Basecamp working alongside it. I touched on earlier about this being a GDPR tool as well. So if I just open the navigation bar a little bit more, you'll see the options that we've got down the left-hand side. And where I've got my archive folder, this is a full record now when it loads up the documents that I've got of every document, whether it's a purchase invoice, a sales invoice, or an expense has been put through. This is all of the documents that I have put through Basecamp into Twinfield, and I can go straight into the source document again if I want to download that, if I need to print it off. So again, from a GDPR point of view, this is brilliant. And the workflow management is something that a lot of businesses use, which I touched on earlier. I'm just going to show you how easy it is to set this up. So if I go into the settings area, go into companies, just search for the relevant company that I'm working with. And if I go to the edit icon on the right hand side, you've got workflow. So you've got different criteria to set up a workflow, whether it's supplier and amount, supplier on its own, or amount. And again, this might just be handy for them bigger customers, suppliers, or higher volume invoices that you might be processing through Basecamp into Twinfield. It's probably quite a whistle-stop tour that, I mentioned earlier that when we're doing these live webinars, it can be difficult sometimes to maybe touch on something that is relevant to everybody. That's why if there's certain things that might not be relevant to yourself as a business, more than happy to arrange something a bit more one-on-one, and we can set up the data which is maybe a little bit more bespoke to the industry and the way that you work. So it is a bit of a whistle-stop tour of Basecamp. But again, if anyone wants to see anything in a little bit more detail, I'd be more than happy to go through that in a bit more detail. The next thing that we wanted to move on to, now we've sort of touched on Twinfield and Basecamp, was a case study. And this is a case study that is for a recent company that was set up with Twinfield called Centralist Group, and it was one that me and Colin had a massive part in. Colin did the training, the onboarding. We had multiple meetings with Centralist Group before setting them up, and Centralist Group are basically a global corporate services outsourcing provider. With the UK entity, they focus on alternate asset managers and the renewable sector. So a lot of the functionality that we find franchisees are using, the consolidation piece, the intercompany transactions, this is what Centralist really needed to use. And it was Adam, Amy and Sean, they basically came on board in January. That was with the aim of growing the UK side. And hence they needed something that was a little bit more robust, an accounting system to really allow them to prepare the multi-currency side, the consolidated accounts. They looked at various options, different software options, but what really set Twinfield apart was the consolidation side, the intercompany transactions across both entities that they had. The ability to easily not just run them consolidated reports, but manipulate the data. When Colin was going through some of the reporting, Twinfield has, I think it's at the minute, 52 reports out of the box. Aside from them 52 reports, you can create as many as you want. You can remove information, you can add more information, add company logos and make them a little bit more bespoke to the business. We also have Twinfield Analysis, which we didn't get a chance to touch on today, which is another reporting tool which works alongside Twinfield that we have a lot of businesses that heavily rely on. So that was a huge part in the decision making for Centralist Group. And again, I think it's always nice to get a little bit of feedback, and you can see on the screen here, they said the process of dealing with Wolters Kluwer was extremely easy. We've had demos of the software, which we found very helpful. Lee and Mike have been great in responding to all our queries, and Colin, who provided our on-site training, was brilliant too. And this was also a customer that we mentioned the integration piece at the start. They also using accounts production. And I think out of everything that we've discussed today, I think the last comment from them there, building a long partnership with Wolters Kluwer rather than just buying a piece of software, I think that's really compelling and a great way to finish the case study, that it is about building lasting relationships. It's not just about giving someone a piece of software and away they go. We want to build long-lasting relationships with all our Twinfield users.
Amazing. Great, Mike. Thank you very much for sharing that. And it's always great to hear, like, it's interesting to kind of always see what the software does and its capabilities, but actually hearing from someone that's using it within that environment, within this industry, I think is super important. So, Mike, do you want to tell people where they can find out a little bit more about you, should they want some more information about Twinfield?
Yeah, so all my details are on the screen. Email address mike.hibbert@wolterskluwer.com. I've put my mobile number on there if anyone would prefer a direct chat rather than email. I'm also on LinkedIn, which is Mike Hibbert, if anyone wants to reach out through LinkedIn. And again, just to sort of emphasize for anyone who's on the call now who may be watching this webinar separate, anything that's maybe not been missed on this call that's a bit more relevant to you for a business, we are more than happy to do a bespoke session which is maybe a bit more industry specific for anyone.
Perfect. Well, look, thank you very much for joining us today. Thank you very much for listening to the webinar. Mike, thanks for your insights, and Colin, thank you for as always an excellent demonstration on the capabilities of the software. We're always more than happy to dive deeper into your individual needs. And one of the great things about Twinfield is its customization. So clearly there'll be ways and means that we can implement this differently depending on what you're looking for. So I'm sure Mike will welcome that conversation. But until then, we just want to say thank you again for joining us. Thank you for spending the last hour with us. And hopefully you got a lot out of this session. Thanks again. And we look forward to hearing from you soon.
Have a great day, everyone. Thanks very much.